Johnny used to hang out at the corner market. And the owner noticed that the older boys would always take advantage of him and make fun of him. They made comments that Johnny was 2 pickles short of a barrel. To prove it, they would offer Johnny the choice between a nickel and a dime. And he always took the nickel because they assumed that it was because it was larger. One day after this happened, the owner called Johnny in and said, "Johnny, you know a dime is worth more than a nickel. The boys are teasing you." And Johnny said, "Of course I know. But if I started taking the dime and stopped taking the nickel, they would stop. I have over $20 worth of nickels at home."
That's a good one.
Each one at one point in our lives has to decide what is important in life. Bertrand Tristan won a contest by providing the best answer to the question: if there was a fire in the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, which picture would you save? And he wrote, the one closest to the exit.
We got it.
All right, thank you. King Charles IV of Spain knew that Napoleon would not be stopped as he ran across Europe. With that in mind, he decided to hide his collection of antique clocks in the crown jewels. He had a trusted servant hide the clocks in one room, and in another room he hid the crown jewels, and the servant cut a piece of the curtain off so they would remember which room where it was hidden. Well, the king returned to power in 1814, well, his son returned anyway, and the person who had been planted there by Napoleon had changed all the curtains in the palace. The new king decided that he wasn't going to destroy the building and then just accepted his loss. Everyone over the years thought it was just some sort of a legend, but a plumber by accident discovered the clock collection. Someone, someday, somehow, is going to be doing more work and discover the crown jewels. Clink, clank, plunk, surprise. There's a story told about a crooked Texan who was the owner of a racehorse. And he took one of his thoroughbreds over to London for an international race. He was seen in the stable giving his horse some pills. And the Duke of Marlborough, who also had a horse in the race, came over and said that it was illegal to give drugs to a horse. And he said, "Wait a minute, Duke, these are just sugar pills." And the Texan ate one and offered one to the Duke, and he started chewing it. The Duke apologized, and there didn't seem to be anything the matter with it. And the Duke left, and the jockey came over. The Texan told the jockey, "Now listen, as soon as the race begins, get that horse in the outside lane, because there's nothing that can catch him except me and the Duke of Marlborough." Now, in honesty, we have something in common with the Texan. We want to be winners. We were raised to be winners. Part of it is because we are Americans. And if you could X-ray our souls, you would see within each one of us that there's something so strong that we call it our treasure, and it becomes the focus in our lives. What we have here is Jesus this morning telling some parables, short ones. Some of them are longer, like the Good Samaritan, but most of them are quite short. And they're about common interests: planting seeds, making bread, buying, selling, fishing, all common everyday occurrences that his audience would definitely understand. He wanted to talk about the kingdom of God. What is it that is important to each one of us? If unfortunately we were ever forced to a point, what is it we're going to give up? What would it be? Family? Our health? Our job? Something else that we have that we feel that is so precious that we could not live without? Each one of our choices is going to be our choice. And some of them are not going to be understood by other people, but we are different. We are going to make a choice that affects our lives. We know that when we make choices, it's a matter of giving up something in order to take on something that we consider much more important. We're giving up freedoms. We're giving up responsibilities. We're making changes in our lives. Some that we may not have expected. In Robert Frost's poem, The Road Not Taken, sums up our feelings quite well, which is why the poem is so popular. The choices we make, the road we choose, we hope is going to make a positive difference. Jesus begins his parable in a very simple way. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field. Now, the worker does not own the field. Jesus makes that very clear. He is working for somebody else in the sun day after day. And all of a sudden, clink, clank, clunk. The plow has hit something. The man curses, son of a pig. Heavy rocks to move, a broken plow. Then all of a sudden he goes moving around and he finds a treasure box. He covers it up quickly. Hopes no one on the edge of the field noticed that he had stopped in what he did. And from that day on, the man starts saving and making plans that he can buy that field at the agricultural price. Now it seems like a strange thing. We plow our fields and work in our yards here in Florida and all we get is sand. But Palestine, if you notice the map and remember your biblical history, is at a crossroads between this power and that power. It's on the sea, it's doing this, and people were coming and going and always wanting to take away their land from each other. And so it was quite common for invading armies to come through. And so people, in order to protect what they had, they would bury it out in a field, with the hope that they would come back and dig it up and be able to begin their lives again. Now, unfortunately, for some people, they were maybe hauled away, they were killed, whatever the case may be, and they didn't come back. And their treasure was there in the field. The kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for pearls. And this story is a counterbalance to the sudden find. We have the definite searching. It balances out the unexpected. Now, this is a very good example, a perfect example of Hebrew storytelling. Yin, yang, it goes back and forth. You have one, you have the other. What we have here is a merchant who is a trader of fine pearls. He knows his way around the market. He knows a real one from a false one, and he spends his time looking for the perfect pearl. One day he comes across one in a back shop. He realizes what he has, even if the merchant doesn't. And so he sells everything he owns in order to buy that one perfect pearl. Now, pearls were very special in Jesus' day. It is recorded in history that Julius Caesar spent the equivalent of $100,000 for one pearl that he gave to his mother. We have the merchant who traded everything he owned because he found what he wanted. We have a farm worker who worked hard and purchased this land so that he could take the treasure box. And at the end of the parable, Jesus asked the question in verse 51, "Do you understand me?" What Jesus is talking about here, which is the point of the whole thing, is do you want to be a part of God's kingdom? Now, it's not just some reward when we die and we suffer through the next few years. It's something that we experience now and we experience in the life to come. A biblical scholar said that 18 out of 27 references to the kingdom of God or the kingdom of heaven, same idea, different words, imply that it's already here in our midst right now. Jesus in the Gospel of Luke said that the kingdom of God is already here in our midst. I am here. The kingdom is here. Part of it. Many people think of the kingdom as something I'll trudge through 73 years and then I will experience God's kingdom. What Jesus is telling us in this parable, that it is a present reality and a present reality in the future. The kingdom of God is God's presence in our lives right now. Now we are in the kingdom. There's a story told of a wealthy woman who was traveling around Europe, and her husband had stayed home to make more money. And she found this fur coat in Paris and sent a telegram to her husband. "I have found a perfect coat for $50,000. What do you think?" He sent a reply, "No, price too high." She eventually came home wearing the coat, and needless to say, he was quite angry. "Didn't you get my telegram?" "Yes, I did. It was so sweet. I saved it." The husband looked at the telegram. Without any punctuation, no price too high. This is our life in the kingdom. When we see Jesus Christ, God's Son, we get a glimpse of what we like in the kingdom of love, respect, understanding, challenge, the possibility of change, the reality of knowing that we are not alone. And as I say, we are marching in the light, but we are also marching toward the light at the same time. These stories, most of Jesus' parables, talk about the kingdom that is available right now for each one of us and can be experienced as we are individuals and as we are a community of faith. Now, I could end the sermon there, but I don't. We want to be kingdom people. We say we want to be kingdom people, and that's absolutely fantastic. Does that mean that there's now a brick wall around us to protect us from the boogeyman and the pain and our doubts of what this kingdom actually means? And the response in biblical terms is hell no. But to accept the kingdom, we know that God is with us. To be a part of the kingdom is to know God's grace. To know that God is a real part of our lives. To have the gift of forgiveness. To be told that we no longer have to feel guilty about our lives. That we want to live under God's rule. That we try to live under God's rule. That we are trying to get closer to God each day. We are searching for a peace that makes a difference. The peace that passes all understanding. It is a journey. If we stumble, we will. But we are living in the light, and we are marching toward the light. If you forgot to read the fine print when you signed up, go back and read it again. In these two parables, Jesus is telling us that the search is worth the effort. We will be surprised when we find it, and we believe that it is ours. Amen.
Amen.